This is now part 5 of the Alchemist, read by me, ASMR Katz and ASMR style. ASMR Katz. Hello, my little mouse. Nice to see you here. Welcome to part 5 of The Alchemist. I will read for you in ASMR style. Therefore, it is absolutely necessary that you put your headphones in your ears, because this is a high quality recording and the microphones give you a crystal clear sound. You can't hear when you have it on a not good speaker. So it is absolutely worth it to put the headphones in and enjoy this satisfying ASMR. I read The Alchemist and it's an amazing book. So please make sure that you already listened to part 1 to 4 before you now skip to part 5. On part 1 to 4 are already uploaded and you will find them in my YouTube feed. Also make sure that you follow, subscribe, click on the notification bell and comment that I can make even more clips like this in the future. So now, listen and let me read between the lines for you. The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Part 5. They were strange books. They spoke about mercury salt, dragons, and kings, and he didn't understand any of it. But there was one idea that seemed to repeat itself throughout all the books. All things are manifestation of one thing only. In one of the books, he learned that the most important text in the literature of alchemy contained only a few lines and had been inscribed on the surface of an emerald. "It's the emerald tablet," said the Englishman, proud that he might teach something to the boy. "Well, then why do we need all the books?" the boy asked. "So that we can understand those few lines," the Englishman answered, without appearing really to believe what he had said. The book that most interested the boy told the stories of the famous alchemists. They were men who had dedicated their entire lives to the purification of metals in their laboratories. They believed that if a metal were heated for many years, it would free itself of all its individual properties, and what was left would be the soul of the world. The soul of the world allowed them to understand anything on the face of the earth, because it was the language with which all things communicated. They called that discovery the masterwork. It was part liquid and part solid. "Can't you just observe men and omens in order to understand the language?" the boy asked. "You have a mania for simplifying everything," answered the Englishman, irritated. "Alchemy is a serious discipline. Every step has to be followed exactly as it was followed by the master." The boy learned that the liquid part of the masterwork was called the elixir of life, and that it cured all illness. It also kept the alchemist from growing old, and the solid part was called the philosopher's stone. "It's not easy to find the philosopher's stone," said the Englishman. The alchemist spent years in the laboratories, observing the fire that purified the metals, they spent so much time close to the fire that they gradually gave up the vanities of the world. They discovered that the purifying of the metals had led to purification of themselves. The boy thought about the crystal merchant. He had said that it was a good thing for the boy to clean the crystal pieces, so that he could free himself from negative thoughts. The boy was becoming more and more convinced that alchemy could be learned in one's daily life. Also, said the Englishman, the philosopher's stone has a fascinating property. A small sliver of the stone can transform large quantities of metal into gold. Having heard that, the boy became even more interested in alchemy. He thought that with some patience he would be able to transform anything into gold. He read the lives of the various people who had succeeded in doing so. Helviges, Elias, and Geber. They were fascinating stories. Each of them lived out his personal legend to the end. They traveled, spoke with wise men, performed miracles for the incredulous, and owned the philosopher's stone and the elixir of life. But when the boy wanted to learn how to achieve the master's work, he became completely lost. There was just drawings, coded instruction, and obscure text. Why do they make things so complicated? He asked the Englishman one night. The boy had noticed that the Englishman was irritable and missed his books, so that those who have the responsibility for understanding can understand, he said. Imagine if everyone went around transforming lead into gold. Gold would lose its value. It's only those who are persistent and willing to study things deeply who achieve the master's work. That's why I am here in the middle of the desert. I am seeking a true alchemist who will help me to disappear the codes. When were those books written? The boy asked. Many centuries ago. They didn't have the printing press in those days, the boy argued. There was no way for everybody to know about alchemy. Why did they use such strange language with so many drawings? The Englishman didn't answer him directly. He said that for the past few days he had been paying attention to how the caravan operated, but that he didn't learn anything new. The only thing he had noticed was that talk of war was becoming more and more frequent. Then, one day, the boy returned the books to the Englishman. Did you learn anything? The Englishman asked, eager to hear what it might be. He needed someone to talk to, so as to avoid thinking about the possibility of war. I learned that the world has soul, and that whoever understands that soul can also understand the language of things. I learned that many alchemists realized their personal legends and wound up discovering the soul of the world, the philosopher's stone, and the elixir of life. But above all, I learned that these things are all so simple that they could be written on the surface of an emerald. The Englishman was disappointed. The years of research, the magical symbols, the strange words, and the laboratory equipment, none of this had made an impression on the boy. His soul must be too primitive to understand those things, he thought. He took back his books and packed them away again in their bags. Go back to watching the caravan, he said. That didn't teach me anything either. The boy went back to the contemplative silence of the desert and the sand raised by the animals. Everyone has his or her own way of learning things, he said to himself. His way isn't the same as mine, nor mine is his. But we're both in search of a personal legend, and I respect him for that. The caravan began to travel day and night. The hooded burdens reappeared more and more frequently, and the camel driver, who had become a good friend of the boy, explained that the war between the tribes has already begun. The caravan would be very lucky to reach the oasis. The animals were exhausted, and the men talked among themselves less and less. The silence was the worst aspect of the night, when the merged groan of a camel, which before had been nothing but the groan of a camel, now frightened everyone because it might signal a raid. The camel driver seemed not to be very concerned with the street of war. "I'm alive," he said to the boy as they ate a bunch of dates on night, with no fires and no moon. "When I'm eating, that's all I think about. If I'm on the march, I just concentrate on marching. If I have the fight, it will be just as good a day to die as any other, because I don't live in either my past or my future. I'm interested only in the present. If you can concentrate always on the present, you would be happy man. You will see that there is a life in the desert, that there are stars in heavens, and that the tribesmen fight because they are part of the human race. Life will be a part of you, a grand festival, because life is a moment we're living right now." 2 nights later, as he was getting ready to be bed down, the boy looked for the star they followed every night. He thought that the horizon was a bit lower than it had been, because he seemed to stare stars on the desert itself. "It's the oasis," said the camel driver. "Well, why don't we go there right now?" the boy asked. "Because we have to sleep." The boy awoke at the sun rose. There in front of him, where the small stars had been the night before, was an endless row of date palms stretching across the entire desert. "We've done it," said the Englishman, who had also awakened early. But the boy was quiet. He was at home with the silence of the desert, and he was content just to look at the trees. He still had a long way to go to reach the pyramids, and someday things morning would just be a memory. But this was the present moment, the party the camel driver had maintained, and he wanted to live it as he did the lessons of his past and his dreams of the future. Also, the vision of the date palms would someday be just a memory, right now insignificant shade, water, and refuge from the war. Yesterday, the camel's groan signaled danger, and now a row of date palms could herald a miracle. The world speaks many languages, the boy thought. The times rush past, and so do the caravans, thought the alchemist, as he watched the hundreds of people and animals arriving at the oasis. People were shouting at the new arrivals, dust obscured the desert sun, and the children of the oasis were bursting with excitement at the arrival of the strangers. The alchemist saw the tribal chiefs greet the leader of the caravan and converse with him at length. But none of them mattered to the alchemist. He had already seen many people come and go, and the desert remained as it was. He had seen kings and beggars walked into the desert sands. The dunes were changed constantly by the wind, yet these were the same sands he had known since he was a child. He always enjoyed seeing the happiness that the travelers experienced when, after weeks of yellow sand and blue sky, they first saw the green of the date palms. Maybe God created the desert so that man could appreciate the date trees, I thought. He decided to concentrate on more particular matters. He knew that in the caravan there was a man to whom he was to teach some of his secrets. The omens had told him so. He didn't know that man yet, but his practiced eye would recognize him when he appeared. He hoped that it would be someone as capable as his previous apprentice. I don't know why these things have to be transmitted by the word of mouth, he thought. It wasn't exactly that they were secrets. God revealed his secrets easily to all his creators. He had only one explanation for this fact. Things have to be transformed this way because they were made up from the pure life, and this kind of life cannot be captured in pictures or words. Because people become fascinated with pictures and words and wind up forgetting the language of the world. The boy couldn't believe what he was seeing. The oasis, rather than being just a well surrounded by a few palm trees, as he had seen once in a geography book, was much larger than many towns back in Spain. There were 300 wells, 50,000 date trees, and enormously colored tents spread among them. It looks like 1,001 nights, said the Englishman, impatient to meet with the alchemist. They were surrounded by children, curious to look at the animals and people that were arriving. The man of the oasis wanted to know if they had seen any fighting, and the woman competed with one and another for access to the clothes and precious stones bought by the merchant. The silence of the desert was a distant dream. The travelers in the caravan were talking inconstantly, laughing and shouting as if they had emerged from the spiritual world and found themselves once again in the world of people. They were relieved and happy. They had been taking careful pressures in the desert, but the camel driver explained to the boy that oases were always considered to be natural territories, because the majority of the inhabitants were women and children. There were oases throughout the desert, but the tribesmen fought in the desert, leaving the oasis as place of refuge. With some difficulty, the leader of the caravan brought all his people together and gave them his instructions. The group was to remain there at the oasis until the conflict between the tribes was over. Since they were visitors, they would have to share living space with those who lived there and would be given the best accommodations. That was the law of hospitality. Then he asked that everyone, including his own essentials, hand over their arms to the men appointed by the tribal chieftains. Those are the rules of the war, the leader explained. The oasis may not shelter armies or troops. To the boy's surprise, the Englishman took a chrome-plated revolver out of his bag and gave it to the men who were collecting the arms. Why a revolver? He asked. It helped me to trust in people, the Englishman answered. Meanwhile, the boy bored about his treasure. The closer he got to the realization of this dream, the more difficult things became. It seems as if what the old king had called beginner's luck were no longer functioning. In his pure side of the dream, he was being constantly subjected to tests of his persistence and courage, so he could not be hasty nor important. If he pushed forward impulsively, he would fail to see the signs and omens left by God along his path. God placed them along my path. He had surprised himself with the thought. Until then, he had considered the omens to be things of the world, like eating or sleeping, or like seeking love or finding a job. He had never thought of them in terms of language used by God to indicate what he should do. "Don't be impatient," he prepared to himself. "It's like the camel driver said, eat when it's time to eat, and move along when it's time to move." That first day, everyone slept from exhaustion, including the Englishman. The boy was assigned a place far from his friend, in a tent with 5 other young men of about his age. They were people of the desert and clamored to hear his stories about the great cities. The boy told them about his life as a shepherd and was about to tell them of the experience at the crystal shop when the Englishman came into the tent. "I've been looking for you all morning," he said as he led the boy outside. "I need your help to find out where the alchemist lives." First, they tried to find him on their own. An alchemist would probably live in a manner that was different from that of the rest of the people of the oasis, and it was likely that in his tent an oven was continuously burning. They searched everywhere and found that the oasis was much larger than they could have imagined. There were hundreds of tents. "We wasted almost the entire day," said the Englishman, sitting down with the boy near one of the wells. "Maybe we better ask someone," the boy suggested. The Englishman didn't want to tell others about the reasons for being at the oasis and couldn't make up his mind. But finally he agreed that the boy who spoke better Arabic than he should do so. The boy approached a woman who had come to the well fill goatskin with water. "Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm trying to find out where the alchemist lived here at the oasis." The woman said she had never heard such a person in a hurried way, but before she fled she advised the boy that he had better not try to converse with women who were dressed in black, because they were married women. He should respect tradition. The Englishman was disappointed. It seemed he had made the long journey for nothing. The boy was also saddened. His friend was in parasite of his personal legend, and when someone was in such parasite, the entire universe made an effort to help him succeed. That's what the old king had said. He couldn't have been wrong. "I had never heard of an alchemist before," the boy said. "Maybe no one here has either." The Englishman's eyes lit up. "That's it. Maybe no one here knows what an alchemist is. Find out who it is who cursed the people's illness." Several women dressed in black came to the well for water, but the boy would speak to none of them, despite the Englishman's insistence. Then a man approached. "Do you know someone here who cursed people's illness?" the boy asked. "Allah calls our illness," said the man, clearly frightened of the strangers. "You're looking for a witch doctor," he spoke some verse from the Koran and moved on. Another man appeared. He was older and was carrying a small bucket. The boy prepared his question. "Why do you want to find that sort of person?" the Arab asked. "Because my friend here has traveled for many months in order to meet with him," the boy said. "If such a man is here at the oasis, he must be very powerful," said the old man after thinking for a few moments. "Not even all the tribal chieftains are able to see him when they want to, only when he consents. Wait for the end of the war, then leave with the caravan. Don't try to enter into the life of the oasis," he said, and walked away. But the Englishman was exultant. They were on the right track. Finally, a young woman approached who was not dressed in black. She had a vase on her shoulder and her head was covered by a veil, but her face was uncovered. The boy approached her to ask about the alchemist. At the moment, it seems to him that time stood still, and the soul of the world surged within him. When he looked into her dark eyes and saw that her lips were poised between a love and silence, he learned the most important part of the language that all the world spoke. The language that everyone on earth was capable of understanding in their heart. It was love. Something older than humanity, more ancient than the desert. Something that exerted the same force whenever two pairs of eyes met, as had theirs here at the well. She smiled, and that was certainly an omen, the omen he had been awaiting without even knowing he was, for all his life. The omen he had sought to find with his sheep and his books in the crystal and the silence of the desert. It was the pure language of the world. It required no explanation, just as the universe needs none as it travels through endless time. What the boy felt at the moment was that he was in the presence of the only woman in his life, and that, with no need for words, she recognized the same. He was more certain of it than of anything in the world. He had been told by his parents and grandparents that he must fall in love and really know a person before coming committed. But maybe people who felt that way had never learned the universal language, because when you know that language, it's easy to understand that someone in the world awaits you, whether it's in the middle of the desert or in some great city. And when two such people encounter each other and their eyes met, the past and the future become unimportant. There is only that moment and the incredible certainty that everything under the sun has been written by one hand only. It is a hand that evokes love and creates a twin soul for every person in the world. Without such love, one's dreams would have no meaning. Maktub, said the boy. The Englishman shook the boy. Come on, ask her. The boy stepped closer to the girl, and when she smiled, he did the same. What's your name? He asked. Fatima, the girl said. That's what some women in my country are called. It's the name of the prophet's daughter. The invaders carried the name everywhere. The beautiful girl spoke of the invaders with pride. The Englishman prodded him, and the boy asked her about the man who cured people's illness. That's the man who knows all the secrets of the world, she said. He communicates with the Janus of the desert. The Janus were the spirit of God and evil, and the girl pointed to the south, indicating that it was there the strange man lived. Then she filled her vessel with water and left. The Englishman vanished too, gone to find the alchemist, and the boy sat there by the well for a long time, remembering that one day in Tarifa the lavender had brought to him the perfume of the woman, and realizing that he had loved her before he knew she even existed. He knew that his love for the world enabled him to discover every treasure in the world. The next day, the boy returned to the well, hoping to see the girl. To his surprise, the Englishman was there, looking out at the desert. I waited all afternoon and evening, he said. He appeared with the first stars of evening. I told him what I was seeking, and he asked me if I had ever transformed lead into gold. I told him that was what I had come here to learn. He told me I should try to do so. That's all he said. Go and try. The boy didn't say anything. The poor Englishman had traveled all this way only to be told that they should repeat what he had already done so many times. So then try, he said to the Englishman. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start now. As the Englishman left, Fatima arrived and filled her vessel with water. "I come to tell you just one thing," the voice said. "I want you to be my wife. I love you." The girl dropped the container and the water spilled. "I'm going to wait here for you every day. I have crossed the desert in search of treasure that is somewhere near the pyramids, and for me, the war seemed of a curse. But now it's a blessing because it's brought me to you." "The war is going to an end someday," the girl said. The boy looked around him at the date palms. He reminded himself that he had been a shepherd and that he could be a shepherd again. Fatima was more important than his treasure. "The tribesmen are always in search of treasure," the girl said, as if she had guessed what he was thinking. "And the women of the desert are proud of their tribesmen." She refilled her vessel and left. The boy went to the well every day to meet with Fatima. He told her about his life as a shepherd, about the king and about the crystal shop. They became friends, and except for the 50 minutes he spent with her each day, seemed that it would never pass. When he had been at the oasis for almost a month, the leader of the caravan called a meeting of all the people traveling with him. "We don't know when the war will end, so we can continue our journey," he said. "The battle may last for a long time, perhaps even years. There are powerful forces in both sides, and the war is important to both armies. It's not a battle of good against evil. It's a war between forces that are fighting for the balance of power, and when that type of battle begins, it lasts longer than others, because Allah is on both sides." This was part 5 of the book The Alchemist. When you are able to listen between the lines, you find so much truth who fits to yourself, so always be open for it and listen carefully. Feel free to follow and subscribe and click on the notification bell. And if you have some thought in mind, feel free to comment that we can get in a conversation with each other, because I try to really answer every comment there is. I hope I see you for part 6. And for now, have a good time wherever you are right now in this world. Yours, ASMR Katz.